What's the most disturbing secret you know about someone that would ruin their life if exposed, but you stay silent, pretending you don't know? My father almost dosed from alcohol abuse-induced sepsis a few years ago, and we moved him out of his home and into an assisted living center. All of his belongings ended up in my garage in boxes. My mom divorced him 15 years ago because she found paperwork from when he was in rehab, and on one of the worksheets he admitted to having extramarital affairs throughout their 30-year marriage. Recently, I've been going through everything and trashing what is expired or no longer needed. I found more worksheets from the same stint in rehab, one sheet detailing all of his seawall encounters. This is disgusting enough info on its own to read about your dad, but it turns out he f***ed my mom's best friend Karen. Best friend since kindergarten, the maid of honor in their wedding, who is still my mom's best friend today. My mom doesn't know, it would shatter her, and she's a tender-hearted saint of a woman. I've been wrestling with whether or not I should tell her. I also found needles and vials of Naxalone with a flyer on how to use it in times where someone is overdosing from options or in. 5 out of the 6 vials had been used. I had no idea the whole time he was in and out of rehab, and claiming to be sober that he was using let alone overdosing that many times. My brother has enough on his plate right now, so I'm keeping this information to myself for now. I'm not sure if this counts, but it's a great story. In the 90s, Montana had a governor named Judy Martz. She was a real ditz, but she loved to celebrate her Irish heritage. When St. Patrick's Day rolled around one year, a friend of mine who was involved with the Ancient Order of the Royal Hibernians was tasked with creating a document the governor would sign that celebrated Irish heritage throughout Montana and pointed out how proud Butte was of it. My friend made up a very formal-looking document with calligraphy and beautiful writing throughout. The writing was kind of verbose, so the tendency was to read it lightly. However, buried in the Byzantine text was a clause. It stated something like, "I, the duly elected governor of the great state of Montana, hereby grant a perpetual pardon for any and all offenses, past or in the future committed by," and my friend's name was there. Governor Martz signed the proclamation, and my buddy still has a copy of it, but he hasn't had to use it yet. My dad was in a coma due to the final stages of cancer. I had helped my mom take care of him several times, so I knew how much more he was supposed to get over the course of the day. We were told by his hospice worker that he wouldn't make it much longer, and that he most likely would never wake up again. So on the last day, we all gathered around his bed and said our goodbyes. His breathing was struggled, and his pulse was weak. My mom got his more, cut out, and got way more than he was supposed to take at once. My siblings didn't notice, but when she leaned in to give him some, we locked eyes and she kind of froze. But I nodded and she gave him enough to finally end his life. Was it murder? Not really. I don't think he would have made it to the next morning, even if she hadn't given him that much. And one of the last conversations he and I had was when he asked me to not let him die miserably, so he would have wanted one of us to do it. My best friend fell in love and actively tried to seduce her biological father, kissed him when he was drunk, etc. Despite being a jobless doctor and addict, he was the one that had to go no contact after she wouldn't let it go. For context, she was adopted as a baby and met her parents for the first time at 18. Apparently, it's not uncommon for family members who weren't raised together. Her adopted father also had the emotional capacity of a stump, and she was still reeling from being raped in high school. She graduated and currently has a successful career with kids and a wonderful husband who I'm pretty sure has no idea. I work as an ER nurse. My friend's uncle has a pretty tough persona. He also has some baseline medical issues. He ended up being rushed to the hospital for what was thought to be one of his known medical issues. My friend asked me to check to see if he was okay. He was there for a foreign body stuck in his rectum and ended up needing the OR. The family still thinks it was just a sporadic GL emergency. I'll take it to the grave. I found my neighbor's Reddit, and now I know way too much about his marriage. They present themselves as a perfect couple, but now I know they aren't. If she knew what he was saying on Reddit, I think that would be the last straw. A nurse once admitted that she gives people who are at the end of their life and in excruciating pain more pain meds when they ask, even if it's enough to con them. She never deliberately euthanized anyone, but just really doesn't believe someone should have to spend the last days of their life in severe pain. I knew my boss was cheating on his wife. I didn't tell her because I didn't personally know her, and I've seen so many women behave toxically to the mistress in the scenario, who sometimes isn't even aware that the man is married. Anyways, I became a target of harassment sometime later and was told eventually that I was being demoted to part-time at a location that was 50 miles away from the one that I worked. I was told that I could quit if I didn't like it. So I did, and then reached out to his wife to tell her everything about her husband. About a year ago, a new family moved into the village, a couple and their daughter. Daughter was 12, dad was late 30s, mom late 50s. There was something a bit off about the mom. She seemed confused about really simple things like how her daughter would get to school. A few months ago, it came out that the father had been a carer at a nursing facility a few counties over, and he had gotten his vulnerable patient pregnant. She had no family, so to keep it out of the news. The facility let him move away with her and the baby, and they've been moving around since. The daughter is friends with my kid, and she's really sweet. I know she will probably find out about it when she's older, but I hope it's when she's a lot older and has the life experience and maturity to handle it. More sad than disturbing. My uncle was almost my aunt. He born in the late 40s with no testic, no vag, and an enlarged or nub, which they discussed removing, but thankfully left alone. Doctor sent him home telling Grandma, "Congratulations on your little girl." She already had 3 older sons under 5, so she was pleased. My uncle spent the first 3 to 4 years of his life being treated and dressed like a little girl. Ribbons and hair and all, though he would ditch them in the yard so he could play rough and tumble and climb trees and wrestle with his brothers. When he was around 4 years old, his tack had dropped, but his pen stayed a nub. He did later in life marry, but he was never able to have children. But yeah, no one talks about it. He was my favorite uncle. He was so cool. R.I.P. Uncle. When I was younger, a mentally disabled woman that worked at my school as an aide in the class with my mom would tell us stories about her boyfriend. She started telling Sewell stories and finally told that it was her high school-age cousin that told her to keep their relationship a secret. She had the body of a woman, but the mind of a child. He's now a well-known politician in our state, and his whole platform is about him being religious and serving God. I've asked my mom and sister that support him if they ever think about how he used and abused his disabled cousin, and they say that God forgave him, so we should as well, and no one needs to know. I always want to tell people about it, but I worry no one will believe me, and anyone else that knows is not going to speak up. My stepbrother and his wife surrendered their only child at a fire station because the baby had a disability. They told everybody they had a stillbirth, but in reality, they didn't want to raise a special needs baby. As far as my father and his wife know, they don't have any grandchildren from their marriage. But somewhere, I have a step nibbling with Down syndrome in the system. I'm gay, and my homophobic father is leaving most of his property, money to my nephew because, as Dad says, at least he'll carry on the family name. Dad doesn't know that my nephew's also gay. Over 35 years ago, I had a friend in Spain. He was Irish and was smuggled out of Ireland into Spain to hide from his crimes. He sent a car with a bomb into a military checkpoint, finding British soldiers. Another time his car was found with bodies in the trunk, so that was when he fled. He told me this about a year after knowing him. He told me stories when he was a kid. British soldiers broke down his front door and took rifle butts to his mom's face. His brother was shot and kidnapped by the British military. I never told anyone until years later, and now it's just a story from my travel experiences that I tell other Canadians about. I wonder if he is still hiding on Ibiza. My father was and is abusive to me and my mother. The last time I went back to my childhood home, he strangled me from behind, and I vowed to never again be in a room alone with him. He is a very successful children's book author and has published over 100 kids' books. If it got out that he mistreated his own kid, it could be a disaster.